Good evening. How are you? Well, it's 65 degrees according to Thomas Jefferson. Humidity 72, so I wouldn't be surprised if it rained. And the wind is at a 2.2 miles an hour. Hardly feel it here. The daily question is what's going on and should we be upset or not? I think it would be good to do a couple of thought experiments. I mentioned this before. Einstein did thought experiments. He would run through the possibles, and that led him to his findings. But we can do it as well in situations. And a long time ago, I took a master's program on information science. And I thought it boiled down to using some of the tools that we had, considering all the alternatives, giving them a weight, and then figuring out which of the choices you should make. Okay, so here's my thought experiment. Say I have 200 troops, and I say there are riots in Chicago, and I'm going to solve the crime problem there by sending in soldiers who don't know a damn thing about law enforcement. With rare exceptions, some might have that prior experience. So, what conclusions can I draw from that? Well, number one, if they don't have any experience in law enforcement, they're really not going there for law enforcement. If there's 200 of them, say they're all great law enforcement people, is 200 going to make a difference in a city of, is it 1 million? How many people are there? And if I were to disperse my 200 soldiers to locations that I think are the worst, what would that mean? That there were 5 or 8 or 10? So what is really going on here? Because by this thought experiment, it makes no rational sense to send, quote, soldiers. So what are they there for? Well, we've now accumulated some evidence. We now have tapes that show us that these soldiers are there to provoke a reaction. They're not there to cure anything. They go to where the demonstrators may be, who are wearing costumes and singing songs and doing the kind of stuff that we think of when we think of demonstrations that are peaceful demonstrations to make a point. So they're there to provoke them, and then even if they're not provoked, they look at a person who is, to their way of thinking, not white, perhaps Hispanic, maybe even black, or someone who looks like a troublemaker, and they create a scene. And they hope that following that scene, they can throw tear gas on the ground. And they can blow off these little grenades, these sparklers that drive people crazy. I mean, they can hurt. And they fire pebbles as well at people. So, metal. So what are we dealing with? We're dealing with a provocation that will allow us, if we're Trump, to double down. Now, a court of appeals in Illinois, in the 7th Circuit, decided today, about an hour ago from when I'm doing this little walk and talk, that the troops can stand there, but they can't do anything. Okay, so that's one decision. We're waiting upon a 9th Circuit decision about what can happen in Oregon. And there's no question the trial judge, as was true of the judge in the 7th Circuit, said there's no reason, there's no cause. It's posse comitatus, that is law enforcement by military, verboten by the terms of the phrase posse comitatus. The Insurrection Act only allows it if there's rebellion. There's no rebellion. So we have the 7th Circuit involved in Illinois. We have the Fifth Circuit on appeal from the decision in Oregon. So what do we think is going to happen? Well, some think that the Fifth Circuit, which has two of the panel members are Trump appointees, which by itself doesn't tell you everything. And some are concerned that the Fifth Circuit will come out on the wrong side of this. Now, I don't mean to get down into the weeds too much, but one of the bases for the Supreme Court to have jurisdiction over a matter is if there are two circuits, and in this case the Seventh and the Fifth, that disagree with each other, depending upon the finding and the facts, that can be a basis to ask the Supreme Court to break the tie. And I don't know if that's going to happen fast or slow, because we still don't have the Fifth Circuit. So that's one set of questions. We have a president who is just proud as could be that he's duped the nation, despite the tapes they refer us to that show there is no emergency or problem. Now, some commentators have been accumulating these tapes. I think that's a public service, because it's better to have facts you can see that contradict Trump, the great con man. So that's important, and more that's being done. And some question, is it having effect? So this is our situation there. Now, we also have this distortion between and among the prosecutors who are basically chasing Trump's enemies. Now, this is a throwback to third world countries. This is what happens when they fill stadiums with the people who are their opponents. Now, we're not there yet, but this is of that kind. So on the one hand, we have these bogus efforts to give Trump excuses to have an occupying force. Now, I spent part of today just kicking around watching some horses race in our county. Some magnificent shows went on today, and there was a large crowd. But it was interesting. In that crowd, I had a number of conversations about what would the military do when push came to shove. And it went from an occupying force irritating people to an actual suppression. Would the soldiers, if called upon, follow an illegal order or not? Now, I spoke to a couple of people today, military, and they pleasingly surprised me by saying I, a Marine in one case, would follow the rule of the law and the Constitution, and I would not perform an unconstitutional act. So that's pretty interesting. And we discussed how the generals who were summoned all sat there in quiet, because that's what they were supposed to do, not exhibit any notion of political favoritism one way or the other. Now, we also have a government that is being shut down, and they're being shut down supposedly getting rid of Democratic employees. Now, this is not an easy thing to determine, because there's a thing called the Hatch Act, which provides a federal employee is not supposed to be active politically, and they, as a rule, are not visibly acting politically. So I think it's more likely that the way Trump will con America will be, he'll choose a function he doesn't like, claim it's full of Democrats, and then exclude a bunch of them. So where would that be? The environment would be one of them. And there are other possibles that Trump has shown himself to despise. We have also this problem, which is we are violating new rules now. A woman is elected to Congress. She is the vote that could order and force the House to follow through on releasing the Epstein files. But the Speaker, Johnson, won't swear her in. And there doesn't appear to be any other way. And in the middle of a government shutdown, they're keeping away from Congress, the members of Congress, when there is this crisis that we should be dealing with. Now, I realize that this is not a collection of good news that I'm talking to you about. But this is an entire trend that would justify us seeking radical action in the sense of a national cry that Trump should resign from office. And in this regard, there is an extension of the Trump arguments, and they are saying without justification that a week from today, this Saturday, there's no King's Day, and they're saying that this demonstration is itself an insurrection. So you sort of see we have military occupation, enemies list, and if you're going to go out there and protest, watch out, because we believe it's an insurrection. Now, the First Amendment is not the equivalent of a rebellion. It's not the equivalent of a threat to America. The threat to America is entirely contained in the Republican Party, and those who dissent are few and far between. And anybody who votes for a Republican in any election is making a mistake because they're putting their own liberty at risk. They're putting whatever government services they've counted on and would like to receive, as they have received it to date, is in jeopardy. Women's rights, persons of color rights, education funds, medical decisions and recommendations and commendations and sources of relief that the government has done, these guys don't want to do. So I point this out. If you're thinking, what could I do on, no King's Day? If you can, go out. Now, some of these demonstrations will be more active. I think they'll try to focus on those who show up in D.C. for no Kings, and they may look to provoke things and say, look, the country is crazy, and so now I'm going to have to put in martial law. We, the people, have to stand up and shout as timidly or as loudly as we can, by voice, by contribution, by supporting candidates who do not support these things, because we are in maybe the final days of the Republic if we get this wrong. So that's what I got to say, and I'll put up a couple of pictures of the horses because they'll soothe your soul. And I want you to know that I was walking out in this field, and all of a sudden I felt a nudging in my left hand, and a favorite horse had slid his snout into my hand and was like caressing me. Now, I know he may want treats from me. I don't normally give him treats for that reason, I guess. I mean, we feed him, but we don't give him treats. And so that was a very pleasant thing. And meeting with these people today, there were more like whispers about what's wrong, because they were celebrating a holiday. A lot of horsemen, a lot of people involved in horses in this county, and the fields were filled with cars, all to watch a number of races. So that's what I did today. This is what I feel today about where we stand. I'll talk to you tomorrow. All the best. Bye-bye.